So last night I made up this board and I thought, all right, I'm going to do like a news of the day kind of thing. And then there was a lot of stuff I was doing research on, so it kind of ended up getting kind of muddled. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate this for you guys. I'm going to start with the news that came out yesterday and being reported today that Ben Lovejoy has announced his retirement. This is that time of year where guys realize they're not going to get a tryout, and if they're getting offered a tryout, they might be like, you know what, my body's kind of broken down. I don't know that I want to necessarily go to that team, so it's probably time. So they have that conversation with themselves, with their families, and then we're getting into September, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to have to call it quits. So all the best to Ben Lovejoy, serviceable defenseman throughout his career. No complaints about his play in Dallas whatsoever. Of course, he won the 2016 Stanley Cup with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I had to pause because I was going to sneeze there. People ask every now and then, what's the pauses about? It's usually what it is. This time in the morning, and it's been nice, but anyways, doesn't matter. So Ben Lovejoy, all the best to him. Cup ring and all that. Pretty serviceable defenseman throughout his career. Speaking of serviceable, Matt Hunwick will not be that for Buffalo this year. So Buffalo was actually sitting above the cap. With Matt Hunwick missing the entire season, they will now be under the cap. So they don't have to worry about shedding players for the cap. They may very well have ended up having to move Hunwick anyways, but apparently he has a neck injury which will prevent him from playing this season. And I wish him the best in his recovery from this. But you do start to wonder if when it's an injury that's going to cost you the entire year, that very often will end up looking like it's a career-threatening injury. So we'll see. Yesterday it came out that Nick Kypreos was leaving Sportsnet. 21 years of time spent there. Doug McLean then comes out and says he's leaving. He's been there 10 years. John Shannon, a producer there and also an on-air personality, is leaving after 10 years there as well. So that being said, they also forced out Bob McCown. They fired him at the start of the summer. And let's get into why. Let's skip around this and get into why, because I did a lot of research last night and these are together. Sportsnet has lost ratings, and they lost a lot of money. They have that gigantic NHL contract, so the layoffs were forecast in June at around the time that Bob McCown left, where he'd had enough of Rogers. And Bob McCown, now I watched him regularly, and he had said a lot of things about Rogers. He had complained a lot about Rogers openly on the air for a while, and he had the new owner who took over after the CEO, or whatever you want to call it, the president stepped down last year. He asked him straight out, why am I up against Tim and Sid? Why was it that his show and Tim and Sid were up against each other? Different Sportsnet networks competing over the same audience. It just didn't make any sense to him. And then there's been a lot of talk about how, now that he's out, Jeff Blair takes over, and they've been rotating in and out who's in there. And there have been a lot of rotations of who's hosting what during the summer. But there's talk about it still being unworkable, that TSN is getting the better ratings. Overdrive, if you're Canadian, you know that Overdrive is probably the superior program. Overdrive is a great watch, a great listen. I enjoy Leafs Lunch, which is funny because I'm not a Leafs fan, but I enjoy Leafs Lunch a lot. And so I just think TSN's doing a better job in that arena. And podcasts are the end thing now. So everybody's got, I've got a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. If basically, they're handing him out on street corners. You want a podcast? Isn't it kind of crowded? I didn't ask if it was crowded. Do you want a podcast? And cable TV sports right now are not the end thing. You've got a lot of younger people. That younger demo that they really, really want is moving away from cable, and they're moving on to online media like this. Even though I don't consider myself media, not even close. So Sportsnet is hacking and slashing costs, which means that eventually, with the ratings, apparently Tim and Sid's down in the ratings as well. So eventually something's got to give. They've got radio programs that they've got to get figured out, and they've got their TV slots to get figured out. And, the thing is, if you're paying on-air personalities like Sid Sixero and Tim McAuliffe to host a show 5 days a week, and you can get the exact same ratings just putting together a clip show. You know, it's a matter of cost, right? It's cost benefit. And then what came out as well was that Kyprios was making $800,000 a year. Bob McCowan was making almost $1 million a year. It's a lot of money to pay for on-air personalities, and so they move along. I knew also when I saw Sofia Jurskovic, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering her name, got hired by the Boston Bruins as the new face behind the bench, sort of the in-between periods person, to replace Alex Kramer. Alex will land on her feet. Boston seems to rotate announcers regularly. It's a thing in the industry, and I think it's a cost thing. I think it's, your contract's up. You're going to want to raise. We'll get somebody else. Doesn't matter. We'll just find somebody. You need another pretty girl to talk to the hockey players. I know there's more to it than that, but that's kind of how it comes across. Sophia's fantastic. So if you're a Bruins fan and you don't know who she is, she's great. She'll do a great job there. And so back to Sportsnet, the rights for the NHL, it's between $300 million at the start of the contract and up to $500 million a year at the end of it. So by the time this contract is up, $500 million. In the midst of it all, of course, the Toronto Raptors go on a huge run. Revenues generated by the Raptors and by basketball went through the roof this past year, and the NHL did a nosedive because the Canadian teams were out. This is what happens. So I do think Sportsnet overpaid for the NHL package. I think it was $5.2 billion for 10 years, something ridiculous, or 12 years or something like that. Anyways, it's some ridiculous number. It was way too high, and they're losing out because Sportsnet, which had the hockey coverage before that, I thought TSN had a better crew than what we see on Sportsnet. I'm not trying to throw shade at Sportsnet here either for this. TSN has some fantastic hockey guys and personalities who I feel bad for when I see them talking about hockey, and I'm like, man, these guys should be talking about this while broadcasting the national games. But this is the world we live in now, and Sportsnet's trying to make its adjustments to try to make its money back. It sort of reminds me of what I was reading with Netflix lately, where Netflix keeps canceling series left and right. And the reality is that Netflix is losing money right, left, and center. But they had a business model that as long as it kept growing, they would eventually make money. Now Netflix's business model's in trouble because Disney Plus is coming in. All these other services are coming in. They're starting to lose their prime stuff. And they've jacked up the price, which seemed to have decreased their viewership, and they're still not making any money. So all of a sudden, people are kind of concerned. They operate at a net loss with the idea that, hey, this will make money later. But if that business model doesn't work, they won't make money later. Back to Sportsnet. Sportsnet gets this huge contract with the NHL, and they go, this is going to make money. This is pure. It's hockey in Canada. What could go wrong? The Canadian hockey teams can go wrong. And that's what's basically happened. And so they're in trouble. This is a contract that's definitely put Rogers behind the eight ball. But it'll be interesting to see what happens because there's a lot of big names, and these are three big names right here. And you may not like Kyprios. I love Kipper. The first thought I had with Kyprios is this. I may not agree with his opinion, I'll say 45% of the time, 60% of the time. But I love listening to him with his opinion. I love that he's different. He's out there, and he's very outspoken. Doug McLean, very entertaining. He could be very wrong on his facts at times, but very, very entertaining personality. And John Shannon, very knowledgeable, very low key. And so it continues this mass exodus out the door of on-air talent for Sportsnet. And I get the feeling they're going to really, really streamline things so that there's a lot less shows and a lot less on-air personalities and a lot more clips. Think along the lines of what happened with the music stations. Remember when the music stations used to actually show music videos? And then they just started showing a bunch of Jersey Shore and that kind of stuff. And eventually it all moved to reality TV junk. And the VJs, as they were called, video jockeys that were hosting these video shows are gone. those jobs are just gone. I get the feeling that in sports, those jobs are just gone. So when people tell me, Shannon, wouldn't it be great if you were working with the media, and wouldn't it be great if you could get on Sportsnet and TSN? Not right now. No. Back in 91 when I graduated high school, I looked into getting into radio. And I said, yeah, I'd love to be a DJ. And I had somebody who's DJ say, this industry's dying. And in order to get ahead, you have to be willing to stab everybody in the back. And you're not the kind of person to stab everybody in the back. So nice guys finish last in this industry. And I get the feeling that TV is going the same route. On that note, I want to skip to this one. So I'll come back to another one in a minute here. Because again, this is basically a day and a half of notes I've been making all squashed into one video. The Altitude Network, which broadcasts the Colorado Avalanche, has sent out an alarming notice that they're in a fight with cable and satellite providers. Dish, Comcast, DirecTV cannot agree on a price to continue carrying Altitude. Dish, Comcast, or DirecTV say, we're not making any money on this. So basically what it sounds like is they want to give a lot less money to Altitude in order to broadcast, and Altitude's like, we got to make something. But for Dish, Comcast, and DirecTV, they're saying no. And they're pointing at dropping ratings. So Altitude's saying, look, we want to keep everything the way it's been. The cable providers, who are a monopoly in the U.S., you don't have the option of switching in the U.S. in many, many places. They have their monopolies. Comcast is here, all right, well, they'll stay out. Time Warner will stay out then. It's insane. But what's happening is really too bad, because if you're a Colorado fan, you may not get to see Abs games if Altitude doesn't figure this out. I'm guessing they get it figured out. It just feels like there's some hardball tactics being played here. But again, we are in a whole new realm, a whole new world, where cable TV is kind of going by the wayside, and it feels like the cable providers are trying to manage this, and their individual channels are trying to manage it, while there's a complete change of the landscape going on. Let's go back up to this. Leon Draisaitl, talking about Jesse Puljujarvi. It seems like he doesn't want to be on our team, is the quote that gets pulled out of here. Now, I've looked at the Hockey News. The Hockey News talks about how he doesn't have any enthusiasm for the Oilers this coming season. There's a lot of talk about his enthusiasm level on various articles, whether you're on TSN, Sportsnet, wherever. Leon Draisaitl is not that kind of guy. He's not he's not PK Subban. You're not going to get a bunch of big smiley quotes from him. He's not going to be all excited, and he's not going to jump out of a cake. He's Leon Draisaitl, and he's a very low-key player. That's how he is. And I think when I see these articles that are sort of like, I don't know, maybe he and the underlying belief seems to be going to this one of these. This like doesn't look like he thinks they're going to make the playoffs this year either. Oh boy, this is uncomfortable. It's fishing. It's Draisaitl being Draisaitl. As long as Leon gets to 9,500 points this year, everything's fine. And they asked him, do you want to play center or wing? And his answer was, I don't care. Wherever they put me. That's the right answer. Wherever the coach wants me to play, I'll play. That's the right answer. So looking for, hey, he doesn't seem... And when they asked him, do you think that the Oilers will make the playoffs this year? His answer was, yes, I do. But because he didn't go, yeah, we're going to be great, I guarantee it, they go, he doesn't seem very convinced. Leon's fine. So my defense of Draisaitl continues. Jacob Trouba. So jumping around to the reason I'm wearing the Rangers jersey. Jacob Trouba says he regrets nothing about his time in Winnipeg, including the holdouts and the fights with the management and all that, because of where he is now. So he met his girlfriend back in, I believe they said they started dating around 2011. This was on ESPN. They do a deep dive in how the dating stuff works. Sort of like PK Subban and Lindsey Vonn getting engaged. Congratulations to them and all that. Lindsey Vonn seems delightful, and I'm sure they'll be the most photogenic couple. I want to say in New York, but I mean he's playing in New Jersey, but I'm sure they'll go over to New York, right? Anyways, I don't want to say in New Jersey. It doesn't matter. Jacob Trouba regrets nothing. He's glad to be in the U.S. now, and that was his plan. So I know Jets fans were angry because he wanted to be, in New York. But I will say this for him. He didn't want to say anything about his girlfriend being part of the reason or a huge part of the reason why he was going to demand a trade until after it happened. He didn't want the Chris Pronger treatment for his wife. So when Chris Pronger leaves Edmonton, Oiler fans were mad because word had it that his wife didn't like it in Edmonton. So Trouba's like, no, I'll take it. So what Trouba's attitude is this: I have a career, she has a career. Her career's in the States. She wasn't going to come to Canada, so I came down here because her career is just as important as mine. And I wanted to be near her, and now we can build our future together. I don't really have a problem with that. I don't. And what he said as well is that he understands that for fans it's about cups and teams and being number one and da-da-da. And he said family's important too. So it's just one of those things that I mention every now and then. I say, hockey players are human. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes it's easy to kind of overlook that and forget that. And so are announcers. For all of the comments I saw, I'm glad Kipper's gone. He sucks. 21 years. Dude's 53 years of age. He doesn't look it. Looks great for a guy who's been on the air 21 years and has taken chirping from people on the internet for over a decade as well. Trouba regrets nothing, and his girlfriend says the one thing that she's kind of upset about is that she sees a lot of comments online about how selfish he is and a lot of this stuff. And she said he's very unselfish in her eyes, and she wishes he wouldn't take that. But again, he will take all of your criticism so that she doesn't get it. I respect that. I do. Moving along to the whole concept of respect. Now, Evander Kane has a way of drawing attention to himself. And I looked through his Twitter feed, and I honestly think people should do this. So he comes out on Twitter yesterday, and somebody made a basketball comment. You should play basketball. You stick to basketball, right? Because he's black, so that's the comment, right? And he comments that this has to stop, and I got this chanted at me during Game 4 against Colorado. The thing is this: there are horrible people everywhere. We have this discussion all the time, like, oh, Flyers fans are the worst. Yeah, crazy Bruins fans are the worst. No. Chicago fans, no. Toronto fans. Have you seen Montreal? Vancouver set itself on fire twice. Hey, we got to those fans in Vegas. They don't know what they're talking about. Have you seen the fans? Have you seen how arrogant fans are? Look, everywhere you go, there are going to be people that are not necessarily great people. That's just how it works. And Evander Kane is reacting on social media to these comments, and I've got this Admiral Akbar up here for a simple reason. If you can't read it, and if you don't know what it is, these are magnets that a subscriber sent me at some point. That it's Admiral Akbar, and it says it's a trap. Evander Kane, I understand his level of discontent. I do. And I understand that there's a problem in the hockey community, because there is. And there is definitely a bias against minorities in terms of just its society. There's going to be people from all walks of life and with all different political bents in any given crowd of 17,000 people. And there are people who believe that hockey is primarily a white game. And it isn't. It isn't. And if you watch any of the meetups that we have around here, or even the one in Vegas, it's not. You will see minorities playing street hockey, floor hockey, any kind of hockey. Even when I was in high school, if I went out and played floor hockey at school, it wasn't just, I'm glad it's only white people, because it wasn't. But there is that feeling. Now, for Kane, I understand why he's upset. But if you look through his feed, he really carries this. It weighs on him. So this is why I'm saying it's a trap. People know it weighs on him. They will make these comments because they know it weighs on him. So what you end up with is, people saying things they don't really mean because they know it's going to bug them. So you're going to have those people in the crowd that are really deplorable, horrible people who say things that you go, really? Did you hear this, security guy? Did you hear this? But you're also going to have people who are like, hey, you want to see me get to Evander Kane? You're going to have those, and those are just jerks. And you're going to have that online too. And I say that as somebody with a YouTube channel. That, yeah, there's people who try to get your goat. And it's tough at times to go, okay, I can't say anything. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut with this. I have no doubt there's issues. The problem is that, you can call it out when you see it. The one thing that's great, though, is that most people will call it out. Most people will say, that's not cool. That's not cool. So I try not to dwell on the horrible things that those few will say, and I go more by the overall support. And I'm just speaking from my own personal experience in running this channel. I cannot imagine what Evander Kane and others have gone through to get to this level. But for Evander, I would honestly hope that he dwells on the positive. He's making a heck of a lot of money, plays for a pretty darn good team, and they have a chance to someday win a Stanley Cup. Those are the things that should be his prime focus. The comment that got him yesterday, it could have been a 15-year-old, could have been a 12-year-old that wrote it. It could have been anybody. And it's one of those things where they're making a comment to get your goat, and it can be tricky not to take the bait. So that's where we are right now as a society. Is it's very easy on social media for people to hey look at me, and just you've got to kind of go, yep, I see what you said and I reject it. So there you go. That's my take on that. And I'm not discounting him being upset at all. I'm just saying I think he kind of got baited on that one. So we'll see if his feed continues to be active. But the thing is now the number one top article on TSN as I'm recording this is that there's a racism problem in hockey, and Evander Kane's calling it out, and I'm thinking, okay, there is, but that tweet shouldn't have been what started the conversation, and it needs to be a comprehensive conversation. It can't just be one guy here, one guy there, and then we react to this incident or that. It has to be a comprehensive conversation, and it's far too big a conversation for me to have here, so I'll leave it at that. Last issue to discuss: NHLPA. Next week, the NHLPA will get an update as a group on what's going on with the collective bargaining agreement and what position they're in. Now, it appears that right now 2 issues have emerged as sticking points. Long-term injured reserve, which some teams think is cap circumvention. That it's not being used the way it was designed to. It's supposed to be this way. My team is at the cap, and one of my top players gets injured. Well, now I need to replace that top player, but my team's at the cap. So what I can do is I can sign somebody to come in and play on my team, so I'm not playing shorthanded while that guy's out. And then when he comes back, he comes off long-term injured reserve, then I have a decision to make. That's not what's happening. Instead, it's, well, this guy's never going to play again, so we'll move his dead cap money around. And so there are some who don't like this situation. And signing bonuses. I said this was going to happen. You have an NHL where you have some haves and some have-nots. And the have-nots are usually outnumbering the haves when it comes to the really big money, rich teams. Really big money, rich teams can pay, much like the Rangers, they can pay huge signing bonuses. You want $10 million July 1st? You got it. Montreal, you want $23 million in signing bonuses over 11 months? Sure thing, here you go. Sebastian Aho is going to be a Montreal Canadian because Carolina can't match that. And then, of course, they did. But there are teams that want to see signing bonuses treated a little bit differently and maybe limits put in or something like that. So there are those seem to be the main issues right now, and we'll see what happens. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding any of these topics. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, I know this is much longer than the usual news of the day video, but there was a little bit more to talk about. It was a little more in depth than usual. And again, I encourage people to look through. There were a lot of other things that were on Evander Kane's Twitter feed that I'm like, I could see where he was coming from, but I was kind of like, I don't know. But that's me, right? And there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're passing your way through. And I will talk to you again very soon, because I have a Toronto Maple Leafs history video to do today.